Honestly, my music tastes right now are kind of stagnant. Maggie and I hear a lot of other artists because we play a lot of shows, and sometimes, people are before us or after us, and we trade CDs, and I hear a lot of new music that way. But I don't really. I feel kind of like I listen to the same playlist now that I listened to when I was in high school. I kind of add songs as I go, but I listen to a lot of classical music. Whenever I'm doing like work, I listen to classical music. Honestly, music is not really what I listen to when I listen to things. I listen to talk radio. I'm obsessed with WNYC. I listen to podcasts like Radiolab, and I love Fresh Air with Terry Gross. I'm such a dweeb. My like backup career option, life goal, dream would be to be a radio person, a person on the radio. Good morning. You're listening to WNYC. I just feel like I could do that really well. And I like that idea. But honestly, music, it's a lot of things people we do covers of. I listen to a lot of like Brandi Carlile, Iron and Wine. The Abbie don't do any of those covers. I love Sufjan Stevens. I probably have the most Sufjan Stevens songs of any artist. I went through a phase in high school where I downloaded things like song by song instead of just getting the full album, which now that I'm playing music and selling music, I hate to think of people doing that with our music and like only downloading. I mean, like, if they're gonna download a song, that's great. I'm not gonna argue them about it. But I do like the idea of someone like taking the time to listen through to a full album. So these days when I get CDs, I try to put aside time to like really listen to it. But honestly, I'm not super attached to anything in particular. Right. Coolest show. I'm kind of curious what Maggie would have said our coolest show is. The first show that comes to mind is the first time we toured. We went to Park City, Utah, and it was like this kind of resort community where all these rich people bought houses, and everyone had their own kind of house. It was like a kind of gated off area on a mountaintop. And I guess it's for like people who want to vacation and go skiing and stuff. They have their own house. But at there was like a community center at the middle of this area, and it had like a movie theater and a bowling alley and basketball courts and like not ice hockey, this kind of hockey, table hockey, air hockey. And it was a really cool place. It was like, obviously, vacation of the elites. And Maggie and I booked a show there. I don't even remember how we did it. And it was an outdoor amphitheater. And we were literally like on a mountaintop in Park City, which is such a gorgeous place. And there was like a tiered, grassy amphitheater where people could sit. And we were on this nice big stage. And we had a sound guy and monitor speakers. And the sound was really good. And it was just so beautiful. It was just the most beautiful show I can ever remember playing. And the sun set as we were singing kind of throughout our set. It was getting closer and closer, and we could see it on the horizon. It was so beautiful. And I'm a sucker for sunsets, so that I would call that our coolest show. But our CD release show with Iron Horse was a pretty close second. Just because felt like such a kind of a high watermark moment for us. Benchmark? Cool thing. It was great. Well, our Iron Horse show was just so special for so many reasons. Obviously, Maggie and I met in Northampton at Smith. So coming back to the Valley is always just a treat. I always say Northampton, or the Pioneer Valley generally is the only place on planet Earth where I ever even have the remotest sensation of being famous, because people at Smith have been so supportive of us. I mean, it started because obviously we personally knew a lot of people at Smith, and then obviously in a college environment, it's just like a community. It's an insular community, and the community has really been supportive of us since day one. I mean, Maggie and I literally started playing music in Sessions' house living room, Wilder living room, to people who we lived with in our houses. So I obviously knew about the Iron Horse when I was at Smith. Maggie and I had this incredible opportunity to open for Dar Williams at the Iron Horse after I graduated, I think. And it was just such a cool... I mean, talk about a special moment in our careers. That was a huge show for us. And just, a lot of times what people look for, people who are like booking agents or people in the industry who, want to have some sense that you are a legitimate person, artist in the world, is if you can say, we open for this artist who's, bigger than us, or, so the frustrating thing is that a lot of times it doesn't really feel like it has anything to do with, kind of the quality of music that people are writing or performing. A lot of times it has to do with just being able to say, we've done this and that, and if people can get themselves into a good position, it'll take them far. Anyway, that's not really a very concise or good way of saying that. My point is, playing at the Iron Horse, being able to come back after graduating, I was so worried about filling it. I was like convinced no one was going to come, and that it was just going to be this awkward thing, because, at a venue that can fit over 100 people, we don't play those size venues. We've never really headlined a venue that big before. And it's a ticketed event, so just knowing that if people didn't come, that was it. Like, this was our chance to get in with the Iron Horse people. And if we didn't bring a crowd, they aren't going to make money, and they're never going to want to have us back. So, just from a lot of perspectives, it was a big show for us, and to have people come and support us and show that, we are capable of filling a venue that size. Not to mention, the sound was incredible. Excuse me. The crowd was incredible. I mean, the energy, I felt like we did not have to work that hard to feel that we were entertaining people, because it was just such a sweet energy coming out of the room. And, everything about it just felt easy, which is not usually true of all gigs. And, so yeah, that was just a pretty great moment for us. Definitely one of the top coolest gigs. Right, so Maggie and I met at Smith College, and we sang a cappella together. We were in the Smith and Poofs a cappella group. She's a year younger than me, so my sophomore year, she got into the group. We weren't super... close, I would say. I thought she was funny. I thought she was cool. I was kind of like jealous of like people who seemed to be her close friends, and there was a girl who lived in her house who she used to play songs with, and I was like, oh man, how did they find that relationship? It honestly has always been a mystery to me how these collaborative musical relationships, or had always been a mystery prior to meeting Maggie, how those kind of relationships come to be, because there's just in a lot of ways it's like a romantic relationship like that. You can't just walk up to someone and be like, I want to date you. You can't just walk up to someone and say, I want to play music with you that we both like. That's not something that you can just do with any old person, even someone who's a talented musician. Just like there has to be a click there. So we my entire sophomore year, we talked about jamming maybe some time, or playing guitar together, and it really, I would say, kind of a lot of these pieces came together. We had an event called Senior Banquet, where we sort of celebrated the graduating seniors who were going to leave the group and move on into the big wide world. And I actually wrote a song for that event. I wrote a song for the seniors. I really loved those women. They were so great. And I wrote a song for them. And I actually ended up getting almost everyone in the group to help me record the song in the living room at Sessions House. And the first person I approached about kind of singing it with me was Maggie. And it ended up being like 5-part harmonies and like this big a cappella section at the end. And I was really pleased with how it came out. That was the first time we kind of sat down together and tried to record something. Although, albeit in the presence of the other girls in the group. And then she sang a song at Senior Banquet that I had never heard, that she had written, which now is like our Hin and Maggie standard, which is The Land and the Sea. Everyone loves that song. That song's won more than one songwriting award. It's a great song. And the first time I heard it, it was like immediately clear. That was a great song. And I remember, I cried really hard. I always tell that story on stage. And I remember thinking, gosh, this is good. Like she's so talented and we should really try to do this. And then we had a summer gig for the Poofs that year where we were playing we were staying in Brooklyn for some reason. It was like a smithy. I don't remember. Anyway, and I remember we kind of got some drinks and Maggie and I I don't even remember why, we were like running up and down the aisles of this like corner deli, kind of drunk. And we were just like doing that, we're like, we should really play music sometime. That'd be so fun. That'd be so cool. But we were like kind of drunk, and even then it still kind of felt like a pipe dream, and that's after the whole Senior Banquet thing. And then the next year, it just kind of happened. I mean, we knew each other better, and we got together in my room at some point, and just with our guitars, and sat down, and and it was immediately one of those things where there was just musical chemistry there, and we just kind of kept going. Very varied. In the time we've known each other, we've really run the gamut. Most of the songs, one of us is the primary writer. Some of the songs are completely written by one of us or the other. Like Maggie completely wrote Sarah. I completely wrote Muscle and Bone. And I already had plans for the harmonies, and I just told Maggie, basically, can you sing this? And taught her the second guitar part and stuff that I had just recorded on GarageBand. And same with the songs that she's written, where she's come to me and said, okay, Keeping Calm the Lies We Know. It's going to go like this. You sing this. Or she sent me a recording, basically, and I just learned it. Of course, other songs are a lot more collaborative than that. I'm trying to think. Like our song Burlington. We wrote that after this weekend on tour. We went almost straight out of the experience that inspired the song into 3 or 4 days where we were at my stepfamily's lake house in upstate New York. And we were there alone in this little kind of cabin on the lake. And there's no internet and no TV, and we just had time to kill. And we went swimming, and we got our guitars and brought them down on the dock, and a couple like illegal pads, and
awesome. Keep going.
Okay. Some of the songs are a lot more collaborative. So we were at this lake house, and we had nothing to do, and I don't remember. I'm trying to remember. I guess Maggie kind of had a chord progression in mind. And we both sat down, and we've done this with a few songs, definitely not just one or two. There's a pretty solid handful of songs we've written this way, where one of us will have sort of a chord progression in mind, and then we'll both sit with paper for like 20 minutes. We like put on a timer, or we look at our watches, and we say, okay, 20 minutes, free write, go, write lyrics. Try to think of lyrics to go with this chord progression. No judgment, obviously. It can be stupid. And then whenever that time period is up, we'll talk about the lyrics together and try to figure out, what the best option is. And those songs, I think, it's funny because I never do that when I write my own music. I'm nowhere near or music by myself. I'm nowhere near so critical. Maggie and I, when we write lyrics together, we just pick apart every little word and we're like, is that the right word there? And it doesn't sound right. And I don't have that kind of editing process by myself. So then there are other songs. I mean, Maggie and I have spent a lot of time that we've known each other playing music apart, very far. Maggie was in Ecuador, I was in Massachusetts, then Maggie was in Massachusetts, I moved to New York City after I graduated, so a lot of the songs have come out of a process of exchanging files. Just like, I'll record something and I'll email it to her. She'll be like, okay, I like what's happening at 1 minute, 20 seconds, and 2 minutes, 30 seconds. I don't like the bridge. Can you try out something else and send it back to me? Or she'll say, okay, I loved it. I added on a second guitar part and 3 harmonies, and what do you think? Songs on our new CD, a few of the songs on our new CD were written that way. We have a song on our new album called Heavy Ever Growing Pines, and that song had like 100 iterations. Maggie sent me the track. I feel like I was being a jerk, but she sent me the track at first, and I said, okay, this sounds a lot like other songs you've written. I like this aspect of it. Can you try other stuff? And I sent that email to her, and then she sent me another version. She moved around, XYZ, and I kept sending emails back being like, I'm not really convinced. Like, I don't think this works yet. And there was probably a dozen to 20 iterations of that tune, of her just moving around the chorus and the strumming patterns and the harmonies, and it's funny to listen back to those early files and hear how far the song came sort of from the original concept. Other songs, one of us will just write start to finish, and there will be no post process of, okay, does that work? It doesn't. Sometimes, well, Sarah's a great example. I love that song. Maggie wrote that song in Ecuador. She sent it to me, and I was just like, oh, okay, like, it's done. It's perfect. I'm in love with this song. I think it's amazing. We learned to add on our instrument. It's called a Shruti box. But, like, other than that, it was pretty much bing, bang, boom, right from the get-go. So there's definitely no hard and fast rule. And Maggie has just moved farther away from me again. She was living in Jersey, and I was in New York City. She just moved to Massachusetts. So it's going to be a whole nother era of songwriting, I'm thinking. In a good way, hopefully. And certainly the fact that we've done long distance in the past is heartening. It makes me think we'll figure it out.
What do you write songs about? What have you written songs about?
I write a lot of sad songs. What do I write songs about? Anything. I guess the biggest thing I struggle with is that my instinct is to write very narratively. As in, like, telling a story that has, like, not characters, but, a distinct actor and what happens to that actor within the song. Not like actor, like performer, but, someone who is doing the actions. And, or, telling a specific song about, this old man did this thing or that thing. Not that I've done that. But one thing that my relationship with Maggie has really forced me to do, she writes lyrics in such a, not obtuse way, but the lyrics she writes, she never has that kind of compunction of telling a story from start to finish. She's like, what I love about her songwriting is she kind of provides you these snapshots, that these images, and she paints these very vivid images with her lyrics that, when taken all together, give an impression of a mood or maybe a story or a scene of some kind. Whereas once I kind of think about what a song is about, like, for example, The Final Straw, it's like kind of a breakup song. When I first started writing it, it was not really a breakup song at all. I just had the line, I think that we should talk. That's the first line. And then I realized it kind of sounded like a breakup line. So I kind of went from there with the breakup idea. But once I decide what a song is about, it's really hard for me to move away from that. I feel like I want the listener to be able to understand what I'm singing about, sometimes to a detriment, because I spell things out, I think, too blatantly. But I guess, what do I write music about? I don't know. I don't really like writing happy music. It feels too cheesy, or I haven't in the past. It's very difficult for me. I love my girlfriend, and yet love songs are so difficult for me. I just, for some reason, there seems to be more ways to say sad concepts to me than happy concepts. I mean, how many ways can you say I love you? Probably a lot. How many ways can you say my heart is breaking? Probably, to me, I don't know, more. Maybe not. I'm very happy in my day-to-day. I'm like I think I'm kind of a balanced person. I don't really get that sad that often. But when I sit down with the guitar, I think it's because major chords are boring to me. I don't want to play C, G, C, D, whatever. That kind of stuff. First of all, it sounds like, to me, it always sounds like a song I've already heard, because a lot of songs are just written with those. There's like 7 or 8 major chords, not 8. 7 major chords. Well, more than 7. But most pop songs are really just like 3 or 4 chords. And obviously, there are good pop songs, but like I don't feel like I can write a song using just those few chords that sounds original and new. And so I guess I usually start with a chord progression of some kind that intrigues me or that I like the sound of. And then I just try to put lyrics over it that I think match the mood. But very rarely are songs really drawn. Even if a song starts from my own experience, it almost always ventures way beyond that over the course of the song. It's very limiting to try to only use things you feel or you have experienced in your own life. Like I said, I wrote a breakup song. I'm not breaking up with my girlfriend, and even songs like Curfew, which is on our second CD, which is a really personal song for me. I wrote it about a very personal experience that I had in high school in a relationship. Even a song like that, yes, kind of the basis of the emotions are true, but it's definitely over dramatic because it is a song. So, yeah, I don't think I could say I write songs about any one thing. I love to sing. Singing is like breathing for me. I cannot not sing. It's kind of crazy, actually. It's like, apart from biting my nails, which I do compulsively, I think singing is my greatest compulsion. Or whistling, or just making some kind of melodical sound. I'm like, my parents, growing up, my dad sings all the time. He's an actor. So he was always practicing for auditions, or he had a huge stereo system in the living room of our house growing up. It was just like tower speakers, and he literally always had music on. And I'm the same way in my apartment. It's part of why I like talk radio. I like having something to listen to, unless I'm doing work of some kind, in which case I put on classical music, which is less demanding of my brain. But yeah, I remember Maggie and I played a show in Chicago on tour, and a woman came to see us who was my mom's roommate in college. And I had met her when I was like a little kid, but I never really talked to her that much because she was a grown-up and I was a kid. So she came to our show. She was such a character. And she and I were talking about my mom. And she said, God, I always loved living with Maddie. You could always tell when she was coming down the alley because I could hear her singing as she came to the front door. And I had to laugh because my girlfriend said something very similar to me. Like as soon as I'm in the building, our dog kind of perks up because he can hear me. I'm like, I feel like this sounds annoying, but I can't even really turn it off. Like I always have a song in my head, even just of any kind. We went on a trip over the summer. We were on safari in Africa, and with my family, and we were in these big open safari cars, so that, you know, there was no windows or anything, just a roof over our heads. And so, you know, it was loud. It was really loud because the wind was kind of in our faces, and we were like rumbling over these, like, you know, grasses and fields and whatever, because kind of just going out in the middle of nowhere. And my girlfriend was sitting next to me, and at the end of the day, she turned to me and she was like, "Are you aware that you've been singing the whole time?" And I was aware, because I'm not crazy, but like, something about having the wind in my ears and also knowing that, like, no one could really hear me very well, I was just under my breath the whole time, and I have a song in my head. And yeah, it's just kind of like that. I really can't stop singing. So if I wasn't singing songs I was writing, I would be singing something. So I might as well write some songs of my own to sing, I guess. Yeah, I'm definitely, I don't know, maybe a creator, you could say. I have very lasting compulsions to get stories out of my head and try to understand. I think it's probably my way of processing the experience of being a human being in the world who, you know, has to place themselves somewhere in the cosmos and have a sense of meaning. Everyone has to figure out how to do that for themselves. But for me, writing music is, I think, a part of that process of just understanding, you know, the greatness, the hugeness of it all, and the smallness of me. Gosh, so what is it like to sing songs about my own experience in front of people I might not know, or don't know,
people you do know,
or even people I do know? Well, to a certain degree, I edit it as I write, because I write for the purpose of performing, at least now. So I wouldn't put into a song, you know, like, I fucking hate my... I don't even know who I hate. You know, I wouldn't, like, call out my, like, high school enemy, just because, I don't know, I feel like all the things that I would edit out would be things that are angry at people. But even then, I'm not really that angry at many people. I guess, definitely, I cannot relive if it's like kind of a gut-wrenching thing. I can't relive that every time we play a song. The only song really that even approaches that is Curfew, because I think that's the only song I've ever written where I cried as I was writing it. It was just like a very cathartic thing for me. It was definitely like closing a chapter in my life, and just being able to look back in a sort of reflecting manner about how things played out the way they did between this girl and I, who were in a relationship. So we don't really play Curfew that often because we need to play it with the band. But when we have twice, it definitely has been kind of emotional for me. Probably because we've only done it a couple times. It kind of depends on the crowd. Like, if I get a sense that the crowd is really listening attentively and hanging on every little thing, I think I probably feel the songs in a more fully realized way. And every, you know, experience performing, the reason performing hasn't gotten boring, and I would hope that it wouldn't get boring, is because not only are we always we're often in a new place, but it's often a new group of people. And the room, the feeling in the room, the feeling, like I said about the Iron Horse gig being so amazing, so much of why it was amazing was because of the energy that was coming off the crowd. So some days, like a song like The Land and the Sea, I'm pretty sure we've played that song at every single show we've ever done, maybe except for 2 or 3. And at this point, we played at least a couple hundred shows, if not more. So that means I've played that song live for an audience at least 200 times. I think that seems like a safe assumption. So probably most of the time, again, Maggie wrote that song. It's her song, so I don't think I could ever feel that song as deeply as maybe she could. A lot of times we play it, it's not like automatic. It's not boring at all. But, you know, it just kind of happens. And yet other times, if the room is really quiet, and people are really... You can feel as a performer when people are tuning in emotionally and, you know, kind of focusing the energy of their soul almost onto you as you perform. And kind of feeling how the audience is experiencing the song. It affects my experience performing the song. So even a song like The Land and the Sea, we've done it 100 times. If we're playing in a noisy cafe, maybe it'll just be The Land and the Sea for the 100 whateverth time. But if we're in a room of people who suddenly care about what we're doing because this song captures them, which if there's ever a song to do that, it's usually Land and the Sea, that makes the experience of performing that song fresh and new and exciting in a whole nother way. So, yeah, I mean, it depends on a lot of things, but definitely, I would say none of the songs have gotten old. Not yet. What was touring like? Touring was great. I love being on the road. On the one hand, it's hard. I'm definitely a homebody. I like knowing where my things are. I like knowing where my home base is, you know, having somewhere to return to. So I have put a lot of energy into my relationship with my girlfriend. Obviously, I love her, and I have a dog, and like I have day jobs in the city, and a life that is very meaningful to me. That said, the experience of traveling, I think, only reinforces my love of home. I mean, like, I think if I was home day in, day out, all year round, every year of my life, being at home wouldn't feel special and good. But there's something incredible. I mean, Maggie and I have also, I think, done tour in a way that other musicians don't necessarily have the opportunity to do it, because between college and family, I mean, Maggie's got a big family. I've got 2 step families because my parents are both remarried. And high school, I mean, I went to a boarding school, so kids came from all over the world. And obviously Smith is filled with people from everywhere. Anyway, between our social networks and networks of people, you know, our parents work with or old friends of whoever, we primarily stayed, both times we've toured, with people who, at people's homes. You know, as I say, acquaintances and family and such. So there's just, I think that's a very different experience than a kind of tour where you're in a new hotel every night. And I'm sure part of the maybe experience of making it is getting to a point where you could stay in a hotel every night and have, like, you know, the suite or whatever. But honestly, I think the reason tour has been so special for us is because it's a group, it's like a team effort. You know, the Han and Maggie team, whoever they are, open their doors to us, and, you know, they offer their guest room or their couch or, you know, even just their living room floor, so we can put an air mattress there. And so often that also includes, in the morning, getting up and making pancakes for us, or, like, you know, when we get there before our show, having dinner ready for us. And that kind of hospitality reinforced again and again and again, night after night. It reinforces this, at least for me, it has reinforced the sense that there are so many good people in the world. And it's really easy to convince yourself that there aren't, because if you watch the news or read any kind of news ever, or listen to the news, anything news, everything sounds awful. It's like people are getting murdered, and environmental change is happening, and, you know, industrial civilization is ruining the planet, and you know, everything's awful. People are dying in genocides and droughts, and everything sucks. Of course, it reflects my privilege in the world that I can feel that everything doesn't suck. And we have been so privileged even to have this network of people all over the country. But going into people's homes and reconnecting, like we stayed with a girl who I went to elementary school with. She moved away when I was in 5th grade. And then we didn't talk for 10 years. And she wrote me a Facebook message in college saying, I found your music. And I love it. And it turns out that her one of her friends was Maggie's freshman year roommate at Smith. One of those, just again and again, feels like this world is a lot smaller than people think it is, and just it's been amazing. Not even to mention the country, the you know, itself, the mountains, the Blue Ridge Mountains, and the mountains in Colorado, and the Grand Canyon, and driving from Flagstaff up to the Grand Canyon through the pines, and going from San Francisco to Seattle, driving through the redwood forest, and going up the Pacific Coast Highway, and coming through the fog, and the you know, the sun coming out just as we're coming around a foggy turn, and then pulling off on the road to take a picture and realizing, oh my gosh, there's a family of seals in the water right here. And then, you know, carrying on to the redwoods, and then getting out of the car in the redwoods, and just being so overwhelmed by the enormity of it, of the time, and of the fact that things that grow over hundreds and hundreds of years so dwarf us in every sense. Something like the Grand Canyon is just like, you know, you can't even, how can you feel that your 100-year life, if you're lucky, you know, can ever have meaning when you look at something that's been carved over millions of years? I mean, so I think there's this combination of staying with people who are kind and loving, and to be humbled by their hospitality again and again and again. And then also to be humbled by the beauty of our country, and honestly, I mean, I am also a person, my dad grew up in Vermont. I grew up camping and going into the mountains and hiking, and I'm very susceptible to the wiles of natural beauty. Like, as I said, I'm a sucker for a good sunset. It sort of comes together into this, as I said about writing music, just giving me a sense of where I fit in on the earth, and why or how what I do has meaning, if it has meaning, which I think it does. People have told us our music is meaningful to them. So, I mean, what is life if not to try to figure out how to have a meaningful existence? I mean, not to be all existential. But, and there's my other favorite thing about tour is how everyone can agree that certain things are beautiful. Every time I travel, this amazes me again and again. Like, you don't have to speak English. You don't have to, be American, or, you could be from any walk of life. You could be someone from the far corners of the earth, and something about the human experience and something about being a human. Everyone agrees sunsets over the ocean are amazing. Why? Why do we all agree that that's beautiful? That amazes me. And we were driving through the redwoods once, and it was really, really foggy, and we had been in fog probably for an hour. So we kind of saw the bottoms of these huge trees, and they were 20 feet wide. They were enormous. And we came around a bend in the highway, and this weird thing was happening. The redwoods, we were right on the coast, so we were driving north. The sun was setting to our left, and we came on the road, and all these cars were stopped on the edge of the highway, and all these people had gotten out of their cars and were just kind of standing flabbergasted, because what was happening was the fog, which was still quite thick, had kind of taken on this very ethereal quality, because the sunlight had somehow kind of cut through the murkiness of it, and was illuminating the fog itself, so that the sunlight seemed to take on this very physical quality, and it was coming through the redwoods. So, and it was the kind of thing where we were driving and we were like, oh my God, what is happening? Like, how does this happen? And yet we were not the only ones. Like, everyone who drove through had already, like, they also agreed, like, this is amazing. We need to stop and get out and take a moment to look at this, because it's beautiful. Why? Why do we all agree? Sunlight coming through fog in the redwood forests is a beautiful thing. It amazes me. So anyway, tour. I think it gives me a sense of having a place on Earth, and sort of what humans can all agree is good. Music, good. Sunlight, good. Inviting someone else into your home, feeding them, housing them, good. It kind of reminds you why, and why do we all try, I don't know. Not to make it too deep or something, but long story short. I would, yeah. Do we feel comfortable just being ourselves everywhere? No. The biggest self-censorship is obviously being gay. It's not okay to be gay everywhere in this country at all. We usually play shows in little pockets of places where it's okay. Like, places that are open to having live acoustic music, unless it's like a country bar, which I'm sure there are many gay country bars. I'm not trying to say anything bad about country bars. For the most part, places open to having music performances might also be more open to gay people. That said, Maggie and I very specifically do tone down references to our girlfriends, or in general just being lesbians when we're in certain places. On the other hand, those places are not always where you expect them to be. I was really worried when we went to Texas. I'd never been to Texas before. We went to this little town, Amarillo, in North Texas, and we came through Oklahoma, and then when we were in Oklahoma, I was like, oh gosh, because we went to like a steakhouse for breakfast, and there's like a lot of, big old, country guys getting their steak for breakfast, and it was kind of, I felt like a fish out of water, you could say. And I was starting to freak myself out. I was like convincing myself the show in Texas was going to be the worst, and I don't know, we were going to get yelled at, and, someone was going to say, God hates bags, or something like that, you're going to hell, repent now. But no one has ever said those things to us. That show in Texas was amazing. It was one of those times where my expectations were so vastly exceeded. We had a great time. A lot of people came. It was such a weird night and so wonderful. And then probably the most uncomfortable I've ever felt was we played a honky tonk country bar in Salt Lake City. And it was definitely awkward. Neither of us was publicly, gay in any way. That said, I think it's important to own who you are. And unless I really feel super uncomfortable, I try to just be myself. Because if you spend your whole life editing, who you are for the people around you, I just think that saps a lot of energy. And you know, I just think it probably owning your identity, whatever that is, and again, not necessarily an easy thing to do, is not the only way, but one of the only ways to be at peace with yourself. I really only, hide when I feel I absolutely have to. And I don't know, I think being part of the LGBT community has also been, it's been huge for us. I mean, we have a lot of support from that community, and I don't want to suddenly walk away from my gay identity just because I'm in Texas, or just because I'm in Georgia. So even sometimes when I am uncomfortable, I don't really change the banter. I just say, my girlfriend and I let people make of that what they will. And the fact of the matter is, thus far, we've been lucky. In fact, the only time anyone's ever really yelled a gay slur at me was right here in Northampton, which is so bizarre to me, because this has got to be like the gayest place ever. For lesbians, anyway. So, yeah, it's kind of been just, I don't worry about it as much anymore. Probably if you asked me 5 years ago, I would have had a very different answer. You can't just wake up one morning and be 100% okay with who you are. And I'm not 100% okay with who I am in all senses. Obviously, there are aspects of myself always that I want to improve and work on. And, but I don't think I have enough energy to spend it worrying about it.